time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Dr. Renee, Alex Armstrong, Benjamin Butterworth, and Will Kingston. Tonight on the show,
the woman who bedded 100 men has conned the world.
We have to stop people sleeping with their cousins.
Yet another little girl failed by political correctness.
Red Ed Miliband hates Britain.
And why I don't care that Essex could be destroyed.
It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5, with a panel about as serious as a wind turbine in Storm Dara, and just as prone, frankly, to spinning out of control. We're here to make sense of the week's absurdities. We are all absurd, really. First up, Storm Dara didn't just flatten a load of wind turbines, it gave us a 20 million quid metaphor for government incompetence. Billions blown on green virtue signalling projects that topple faster than a Labour supermajority at the next election. Reliable energy, affordable bills, forget it, dream on. All we get is more hot air from Westminster. And this time it's not one we can blame on those poor cows. Meanwhile, Yvette Cooper has suddenly remembered what deportation means. Syrians are potentially about to be told that their country's safe again. And fair enough. If they're forming a new government, they can start by welcoming their citizens back. Though I reckon Will Kingston, heading back to Australia tomorrow, is nervously checking his paperwork just in case Yvette's on the warpath over a free speech episode too many. And in London, the rich are offloading their mansions faster than Rachel Reeves can say, "We'll tax your wealth." Even the oligarchs are scared of Labour's tarmac socialism. At this rate, Labour peer Lord Alan Sugar will be queuing for a 99 quid Ryanair flight out of Luton. Also joining me tonight is Dr. Renee, here to prescribe some much-needed common sense after a week that's had less stability than one of those wind turbines in a hurricane. And Alex Armstrong is ready to tackle the headlines with the enthusiasm of a booze hound on Boxing Day. And on the loony left of the panel, literally, Benjamin Butterworth, the wokest warrior this side of the channel, is back to remind us that taxing the rich, sending the Syrians home, and probably even Storm Dara itself are all hate crimes. If there's a grievance to be found, Benjamin's on the prowl. From spinning turbines to spinning politicians, we've got more chaos tonight than the BBC's HR department at the office Christmas party. Let's dive in. You know the drill. Each host outlines an argument about a chosen topic, then we all pile in. And of course, we want your views as well. Send them and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. And don't forget your questions in Ask the Five. No topics are off limits. But before we start tearing each other apart, here's your Saturday night news with Sophia Hill.
Thank you, Darren. Very good evening. It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Sophia Hill with your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Now, in the last hour, we can report that the billionaire founder of the high street fashion chain Mango, Isaac Andic, has died. The 71-year-old fell down a ravine to his death whilst hiking in a mountain range just outside of Barcelona, according to Spanish media. Andic was with his son and other family members when he fell, triggering a large emergency response. The Turkish-born businessman founded Mango in Barcelona in 1984, with Forbes estimating Andic's net worth to be $4.5 billion. Now, more than 35,000 migrants have crossed the Channel illegally in small boats so far this year. The milestone figure was reached this morning after at least 250 migrants made the illegal journey in 5 small boats. After more than a week of no small boat crossings because of the bad weather in the Channel, more than 1,150 migrants reached the UK's waters in just the past 3 days. It takes the provisional number assessed by GB News to 35,130 since the beginning of the year. Chinese money linked to Prince Andrew is now under investigation by MI5 as more details emerge about the embattled Duke's connection to an alleged spy. It's believed Prince Andrew invited the man in question, described as a close confidant, to Buckingham Palace, with their relationship reportedly dating back to 2012. The royal has now said he ceased all contact with the businessman in question and denied discussing anything of a sensitive nature. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace have claimed it has no power to scrutinise the Duke's finances. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper says the government will always take necessary action when it comes to the country's security.
Well, our security and intelligence agencies are continually vigilant for any threat to UK national security, whether that be around foreign influence, whether it be around espionage, whether it be around any security threat. And so, of course, we won't hesitate to take action in individual cases or more widely wherever any challenge arises.
Now, construction workers are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than the national average. It makes it one of the deadliest professions for mental health problems in the UK, according to a new report. Social media company On The Tools, the UK's largest community of tradespeople, has found that 73% of the country's 2.1 million construction workers have been affected by mental illness. In the last decade, 7,000 have taken their own lives. The company is trying to raise £2.5 million to fund counselling for workers in the industry. And a former Premier League footballer has been appointed the president of Georgia amid heightening tensions over the country's relationship with Russia. 53-year-old Mikhail Kavalashvili was a striker for Manchester City between 1996 and 1997 and later played for several clubs in the Swiss Super League. He was elected to Parliament in 2016 and in 2022 co-founded the People's Power political movement, a splinter group of the ruling Georgian Dream Party. The 4 main opposition groups have rejected Kavalashvili and have boycotted Parliament, insisting that the elections were held in October were rigged. And leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, has performed his Christmas single in Bath this afternoon. Davey was joined by the Bath Philharmonia Carers Choir at their Christmas concert at the Bath Forum. The single was written by 6 young carers and has climbed the charts since its release, with all proceeds going to the Carers Trust and Bath Philharmonia. Ed Davey has even pledged he'll do a skydive if the single gets 10,000 downloads next week. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Hill. More from me in an hour, but now it's time for the Saturday 5.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for a very lively show. We're going to crack on with tonight's first debate and I'm going to abuse my position in the middle here and kick us off We need to be absolutely blunt as a nation. Another innocent little girl is dead, and once again, the people who should have protected her were too scared to act. Ask yourself why. Because in Britain today, it's apparently worse to be accused of racism than it is to ignore a child being beaten, tortured, and ultimately killed. The tragic case of Sarah Shahif, just 10 years old, is a damning indictment of a society that's utterly paralysed by fear, fear of words, and fear, frankly, of baseless accusations. The horror that that child endured should never, ever have happened. Broken bones, burns, injuries so severe that they frankly defy comprehension. And yet there was no intervention. Why? Because asking questions about a bruised child suddenly coming to school wearing a hijab might, God forbid, upset someone's cultural sensitivities. And let's be clear, this isn't an isolated issue, it's a pattern. You've seen it time and again. The authorities tiptoe around certain issues and abuse within them, terrified of being branded as bigots. But what's truly bigoted is valuing multicultural dogma over a child's life. If the inquest into Sarah's death doesn't examine the toxic culture of fear that let us slip through the cracks, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. And the real racism, well, the real racism is pretending that little girls like Sarah and the girls in Rotherham, Telford and Oldham aren't worth protecting. Little Sharifa deserved a world more than she actually received. She deserved to live in a country that put her life and her safety above a little bit of middle-class politically correct discomfort. If we don't learn from this tragedy, from her tragedy, then we're complicit in the next one. No more excuses. No more looking the other way. It's time to stand up for British values and actually stop apologising for them. Reading that, Renee, you're a mum. You must have thought, it's heartbreaking. It was horrible.
Do you know, for me, as a mum and a doctor, there are so many elements of it that are heartbreaking. Not only that anyone could inflict pain and suffering on a child, any child, but also that we're going to have the same, we will learn lessons from this. The lessons are clear. There's too many agencies with too many gaps in between that don't talk to each other and everybody's too scared to act. Someone should have stepped forward and taken a decision about that little girl. She was on the at-risk register when she was born.
I mean, the Times are reporting today that she was effectively handed over to someone who was on the sex offenders register. You know, it's that sort of... You just can't comprehend that this is allowed to happen in this country.
And a little girl who goes all the way through school, not looking like her family were particularly religious, and then she suddenly turns up with a headscarf.
Yeah.
Somebody should ask questions about that, and they shouldn't be scared to ask questions about that. What has happened that you're suddenly wearing a headscarf? Can we take it off? Are we allowed to look? She was covering up injuries, or she wasn't. The people who were injuring her were.
Yeah, it's more of this politically correct nonsense that we saw that led to the grooming gang epidemic in this country.
Yeah.
It's cover-up after cover-up and failure after failure of the services that are designed to defend young children, to defend young girls, young boys and whoever else from these types of people. That is constantly letting Britain down. It makes this country, well, it puts this country backwards, decades, centuries even. This is not stuff that we should be talking about in 2024, but
it
yet
does.
we are.
And make no mistake, there are plenty of British people that have abused their children. This is not a culture.
Yeah.
But what we must never have anywhere is barriers to going forward and saying no.
Well, just to read out that Times article, it says the council that supported Sarah Shahif's father and eventual murderer being given custody was previously reprimanded for placing a girl with an accused paedophile relation who allegedly went on to abuse her. I mean, these kinds of failures, you know, I just can't get over it. And I'm worried, not that the report won't find failures, I'm sure it will, but that actually the report won't cover absolutely everything that needs to be covered there. Were there failings due to political correctness, effectively?
Yeah, there are some stories that we talk about that are so morally reprehensible and so shocking that it is actually really difficult to actually come to the so what or the point behind this. And there is obviously institutional failures that are based on incompetence. There is an ideological evil here that we need to come to grips with. The ideological evil is that for too long on the left, they have conflated culture with race. That is why there is the fear in institutions. It is the fear of being smeared as a racist if you go in and you make legitimate criticisms about a cultural subgroup. Make no mistake, this proves beyond any shadow of a doubt there are cultural issues at play in ethnic minority groups in this country, and that is worthy of investigation. And if we don't make the separation between race and culture, more instances like this will happen.
Benjamin, one of our viewers says, called Celia, says, welcome back, Benjamin, even if you're a lefty.
I'm also on a sinking chair, so... yeah, if I disappear under the table...
That is a welcome back.
That's why...
That was our gift.
I don't think this was missed because of the culture, because when you read the culture of the victims and of the family, the abusers, because when you read the evidence, there were so many times when they did spot the abuse and the harm, and I remember reading that this girl would run away from her father when he tried to come near her. So it was absolutely obvious, and so I think it'd be too simplistic to say, well, there were cultural barriers, because clearly you have a situation whereby the people whose job it is to safeguard kids, for whatever reason, don't have the power or feel they have the power to actually step in and safeguard kids.
Well, I think the failure potentially is more around the media and the reporting side and the fear there of being smeared as being bigots. And this is a trend that has started with Rotherham, and we're seeing it more and more. The accountability mechanisms from other institutions aren't there to hold rubbish, departments of government to account.
I guess the question is, Benjamin, I think you're right. I think there were plenty of opportunities that they could have intervened. There was 15 missed opportunities to save this little girl's life. The question is why they didn't.
Can I ask you, as a GP, if someone comes in, a child comes in and they have bruises or something that isn't explainable, how hard is it for you to raise that with a parent or to pass that on to services?
Well, I have a child at the moment that I've just pushed through to services, and services are actually finding it quite hard to interact with the parents, and I'm having to say to them, it doesn't matter. Ignore the parents. You need to find out what's going on with this child. So I think it depends on the GP and how hard you're prepared to push it. I feel very passionately about children, and I'll push it to the lengths that I will. But I think sometimes if you're getting pushback that we've investigated and we think it's fine, a point does come, I guess, where a GP would say, OK, if you've investigated it and you think it's fine.
But do you honestly think, though, Benjamin, that if the dad had been a white fella from Dagenham, that there wouldn't have been more of a push to get this little girl into safety?
Well, I mean, there's certainly a track record of white fellas beating their wives and beating kids historically, so, it's not as though that doesn't happen a lot.
No, I agree.
And I think there is actually, if there's a cultural problem, it's one that may be more acute in this community but exists generally, which is this idea that you can hit your kid and there's sort of an acceptable way to hit your kid. And I think that grey area is extremely counter-productive.
Well, I think most parents know the difference between smacking your child so hard that they have to wear a hijab to go to school and reprimanding them for being naughty.
I'm sure they do, but as far as I'm concerned, this illustrates that smacking your kid should be, as it is in Wales, I think, illegal.
No, I don't think
you should not be able to hit your kid in any form, and that would empower those kids. I mean, this one was particularly young, but you get kids that are told, well, I'm not breaking the law because I can smack you, that's legal. It shouldn't be.
Do you think a young woman in an Asian household would be empowered by an anti-smacking law?
Well, you would hope that when they go to school, they would feel acceptable to speak to a teacher. But look, there's no doubt that it would be very difficult, but it'd be very difficult for any child.
And then the school, though, says, oh, we can't do anything about that because, the bogeyman in the room. Anyway, right, we'll move on from that. Still to come tonight, Renee's going to give her medical medicine to the panel. Her take on the morality and science around the first cousin marriage scandal. But next, is Ed Miliband about to bankrupt us with his net zero agenda? He'll be all right, millionaire Miliband. You're with the Saturday 5. We're live on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Bansky's Girl with Balloon is arguably one of the artist's most recognisable images. So when a limited edition print signed by the artist was stolen from Grove Gallery in London, an investigation was launched by the Metropolitan Police's Flying Squad. The work was thankfully retrieved. The desire to own great works of art has once again become evident this week, albeit a little further afield on the continent. Police in Italy have uncovered a criminal network forging artworks by Banksy, Andy Warhol, Pablo Picasso and others. Investigators said that they've seized more than 2,100 fake pieces of art with a potential market value of about £165 million. With me to discuss that case is the Chief Executive of Grove Gallery, James Ryan.
The art world needs to tighten up. It is known as a bit of a Wild West out there because people will try and chance it with these forgeries. You're quite right, there's only one actual original, but even auction houses have been hoodwinked before.
The burglary that you suffered is sub judice, so we have to be careful what we say about it. But it must have been a bit of a shock to you. I mean, was it a broken window, a smashed door?
At 10, 11 o'clock at night, and just hammer straight through, shoulder barging through the door, and then in and out. You know, gone in 60 seconds. I must say, I know. Obviously,
that a targeted attack. The person would have known what he or she was after. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I must say, I know they cop a lot of flack, the police force, but the flying squad got the artwork back within 3 days. They were fantastic. So yeah, I've never heard or seen, other than the Thomas Crown Affair type film. You know, I just didn't think it'd be happening to little old me, you know, in Fitzrovia, but it did, and thankfully we got it back.
GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. On the way I'm dressed, someone just said I got the memo. I don't know what the memo is. Falling through a John Lewis sale? Is that the memo? Maybe. And another comment. Michael says, look at Hare Hills. When social workers tried to remove a child at risk within that community, the community rioted and forced the children to be returned.
True.
That is a good point. Oh, actually, Judith is very excited. She says, Butternut is back. And Evening Darren, Crispy Duck, I see what you did there, says, Evening Darren, somebody needs to suck on a fisherman's friend.
What does that mean?
Cough, cough.
Oh, fisherman's friend. Oh, I wasn't sure what that word would be.
Yes, well, I haven't made a Willie in the corner joke yet. I'll have to get with it. Right, now it's time for our next debate. Who's going next?
It's going to be me, Darren. And I need to start with an apology. No, not to Benjamin Butterworth, but to the nation, actually. Because 12 years ago, when I was a young lad in my early 20s, I worked for the Labour Party. Ooh. Yes, I did. I know, for all my sins. But I didn't just work for the Labour Party. I worked for Ed Miliband's shadow cabinet, one of his shadow cabinet ministers. And I'm apologising, because obviously I'm a changed man. I hope you all know that. But I'm apologising even more because it's pretty clear today, now that the man is in power running the Nut Zero department, that he hates Britain and he wants to bankrupt our country. LBC had a little interview, which we'll show you the clip in a second, but he couldn't answer where £43,000 was spent on refurbing the offices in his department. Take a look at this.
British people have paid £130,000 to the government since you came into power for offices to be redecorated and have new furniture. Of the £130,000, £43,000 has gone to the Net Zero Department, DESNZ. What's it paid for, Mr Miliband?
Well, I have no idea, Nick.
So you've been in receipt of £43,000 of £130,000.
Honestly, come on, honestly, you know, look, I'm worrying about the nation's energy system. I'm trying to get the nation's energy system right. I don't know.
You're not aware of this refurbishment?
No, I'm not.
Have you got a new chair?
Expensive chair.
He's laughing at you. They're all laughing at you. He's not the only cabinet minister that can't answer a question, by the way. None of them seem to be able to answer a single question because they're completely incompetent. But let's just talk now about his nut zero agenda. He's claiming that, and did claim during the election, that your bills would go down. Well, multiple reliable sources are now saying that they can't guarantee that will happen. So you've been conned yet again. And yesterday, or a couple of days ago, only 8.3% of all your energy came from wind. That's 2/3 from fossil fuels. Now, he's promised you that this is going to generate thousands of jobs for Britain. He's promised you this is going to lower bills. Another lie. But thousands of jobs are absolutely leaving the country. We saw with Port Talbot closing down. This is going to destroy Britain. It's going to make your bills go up. Is it time we drill, baby, drill, get that gold out the ground instead of this nut zero nonsense? Let alone the thousands of solar panels that were destroyed in Storm Dara the other day. Isn't it time we end this, Will?
On that point, hang on, one of our viewers emailed in, where is Mad Ed going to get the £500 billion to install 1 billion solar panels across the United Kingdom? I mean, that's why they're attacking, your lot are attacking the farmers, isn't it? You want their land so you can pave over them with solar panels.
Well, it wasn't why I was attacking them, but I think it's a perfectly good reason to attack them, yes.
Do you know, I look
That's
at that
an outrageous
picture of
thing
those
to
solar
say.
panels across our countryside, and they are so goddamn ugly, especially when they've been damaged.
They're also useless.
They're useless.
But that's
coming from China. We're paying China. We're industrialising China while we deindustrialise ourselves and bankrupt ourselves at the same time.
This is polluting the ground.
Yeah.
Look at thousands of panels destroyed. It's hardly sustainable.
It looks like Glastonbury after the hippies.
It does.
All over
It's the same sort of thing, isn't
If
it?
only they were that tidy.
But we have to admit to ourselves, this doesn't look to me like sustainability. It wasn't just solar panels, by the way. Wind turbines were toppled. We had to pay £1 billion in the last year to turn them off. I mean, this is a ridiculous policy. Come on, Benjamin, you have to admit, this isn't making Britain better. Even the policy people are saying it's going to make us worse off or the same.
Well, quite obviously, our energy system does not work at the moment because bills have cost a fortune. And all it took was a pretty horrific water breakout and we were extremely vulnerable. You can't have a situation where you're exposed to that kind of risk. It's a national security issue. And the idea that because some solar panels were knocked off, they weren't sufficiently glued down when there was some wind, the idea that that means you shouldn't have solar power that could save a fortune for decades to come is an absurd argument.
But why
That's
don't we
an
just
anecdote,
drill?
not
Why don't we
evidence.
just drill? We've got gallons and gallons and gallons of this gold sitting underneath us. We could be a wealthy, wealthy country. We've got it in the Falklands as well. Why don't we just drill for a little bit? Instead of rushing this agenda, and maybe you're right, maybe we should have a mixture of both and sustainability, why don't we drill for the time being?
Well, I think the fact is that oil is going to run out, and at some point you have to have another way of providing energy.
Yes,
and I think it makes complete sense. You'd be an idiot to say that you shouldn't prepare for that. Just because you've got 10 years.
But oil is not going to run out
for a very long time.
5 years, is it? By 2030, oil's going to run out in 100 years. We have plenty of time. We have plenty of time to build nuclear modulators, mini ones that yes cost a lot of money, but we only need about 5, and we could run the whole country in a very clean way. So this is a nonsense. They don't work, solar panels. They're very inefficient. They're actually only got a lifespan of about 30 years. They're all coming from China, so they're not economically friendly when they're made. They're being made with precious metals, which African children are digging out of the ground and dying to produce. Well, we're just so...
As in losing their life? Or
losing their lives. And we're so hypocritical in everything we do.
Look, I mean, we have to be more sustainable. We can't be reliant on other countries, and we can't just rely on oil forever.
Why?
And at some point, you have to prepare for that.
He has a good question.
Why? Why do we have to be more sustainable when you see the major emitters in the world focusing on growth over sustainability?
But that's not correct, because China has a net zero target of 2060. China has more electric vehicles than any other country.
They're also building three.
So it's very cheap for them.
They're also building
a coal-fired power station every day.
But if your argument is that, oh, well, China is their emissions are going up, which they are, but they're committed to bring it to net zero 10 years after us by 2060. So if they're going to do that, why shouldn't we have an expectation? And how can we lecture them if we don't?
If the UK sunk today under the ocean, it would make no difference to global emissions at all.
Well, good news, climate change means it might.
Very briefly.
This is a foreign policy challenge, not a domestic policy challenge. If you genuinely cared about climate change, you'd be putting as much pressure on China as possible to reduce their emissions, because that's the only way the climate will be impacted. The UK does not impact the climate.
This weakens the West, and China are laughing all the way to the bank. I couldn't believe that more strongly. Right, still to come tonight, Willie's going to say that we're all being taken for fools on OnlyFans. He's not on it, don't worry. You're not going to find a Willie on the internet. And Renee tells us why we should not keep it in the family. Good Lord, that sounds filthy. But next, build. Oh, block. Can Labour defeat the NIMBYs? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Metaverse. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's a return to the rather grey skies for most of us. The wettest of the weather will be up across parts of Scotland. And for all of us, thanks to the winds coming in from the Atlantic, it will be feeling a good deal milder than it has been of late. As we return to Saturday evening, we will hang on to some clear skies initially across the far southeast, but cloud and rain across the west will spread across all parts during the course of the night. So we end the night really rather cloudy, some hill fog around, with the wettest of the weather really across the west. But note the temperatures, most of us seeing temperatures no lower than around 8 or 9 degrees. So it'll be a mild start to Sunday, but a rather cloudy one. We may well just see a few glimmers of sunshine across the far southeast and across East Anglia too, where further west across England we could see some spots of rain across the moors, the Welsh mountains too. Similar story for northern England, some rain across the Pennines, maybe also the mountains of Northern Ireland. But the wettest of the weather really will be across parts of western Scotland, where across the east of Scotland we may again just see a few glimmers of sunshine. And really, as we go through the course of the day, very little changes. The wettest of the weather always across more western and northern areas of the country, with that rain turning increasingly heavy and persistent later on across northwestern Scotland, and combined with a strengthening wind here. Still always a chance of a few glimmers of sunshine the further east you are, and for all of us a milder feeling day, as I mentioned, highs potentially for some of us reaching 13 degrees. Looking ahead to Monday, a little bit more breeze across the whole country, so that hopefully will break up some of the cloud across England and Wales, and hopefully more of us seeing some sunshine on Monday, but still the risk of some further heavy rain across Scotland, that rain really not going very far anytime soon. That continues on to Tuesday, with potentially unsettled weather more widely for all of us on Wednesday.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your emails about tonight's topics. Michael says, one thing is correct, we shouldn't be reliant on getting energy from other countries. If only we had coal, gas and oil reserves of our own to use. Oh, wait, we do. And Barbara says, Miliband, and that's not me, she used that, Barbara did, is flippantly arrogant and there seems to be a link missing in his brain. And I object to my tax going to him. Yeah. Millivolt. And Rebecca says, if Ed Miliband bankrupts a country for his mad schemes, can we claim misrepresentation and claim the money back from his and those who work for him and their money?
Should have, like, you know, when you get a faulty product, you can send it back. We should be able to do that with governments. Yeah, false advertisements.
Right, OK, now it's time for our next debate. Who's going to go next?
It's me, unfortunately. Well, I come with good news. There are plans to destroy Essex. Yes, that's according to Priti Patel, the Conservative MP, who posted earlier this week that the Labour government is on a mission to destroy Essex. It is hell-bent on imposing huge increases in housing targets. Well, I can't believe you wait a lifetime and then 2 buses turn up at once, destroying Essex and building houses. Sounds like a great plan to me. But in all seriousness, we have a situation in this country where millions of people on good salaries, let alone difficult salaries, are unable to buy their own home. And you cannot have a situation where boomers are more bothered about seeing their golf courses than letting their grandkids have houses. Well, they're sat there complaining they don't get their winter bonus to fuel their house all winter. You've got kids that can't even buy houses to have heating in. It's a complete mess, and I think you should have no right to oppose housing in your area, and I couldn't care less about the newts and the bats. I want homes for people before we have homes for the bats. Renee, what do you think? Dr. Renee,
never thought you would be for damaging animals.
I couldn't care less. I really couldn't. The idea that we run this country more bothered about some random insect having a habitat than millions of people that just want to start a family or have security.
I agree with you.
It's mental.
It's rare, but I do agree with you. It's mad. We're building £100,000 bat tunnels.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I absolutely agree. But we do have to have consideration for our countryside, because otherwise there'll be nothing for our children to enjoy or learn about in the future. So maybe there's a compromise.
Well, there won't be any children because people can't get a house to start a family in.
Yeah, well, there's a very simple solution to this. Stop importing the hundreds of thousands of immigrants every year that need to be housed.
Can you explain the logic?
A bit ironic from you, but...
Well, Benjamin, can you explain the logic between building 1.5 million homes and then the BBC said today that we need more builders because we haven't got enough builders? Because over the past, 20 years since Labour said, oh, it's going to be a really good idea if we just put all young people onto useless Mickey Mouse degrees at universities that aren't worth the paper that they're written on, that's the solution that we need. We've got no builders as a consequence in this country. No one works a trade anymore. And we're saying we're going to have to bring in a load more to build the houses to solve the migration crisis that we've got going on.
Doesn't make sense. Make it make sense.
Well, we do have a problem that there aren't enough people that want to be builders, that want to be brickies. Not a particularly badly paid job because of supply and demand. Yes. It's quite well paid at the moment. But I think it is a fact that, before most of these people were coming from Eastern Europe, Poland in particular. There's 1 million Polish people in the UK. But the trend now is they're returning to Poland because they're getting richer in Poland than they are in Britain. And so, we probably will have to have migration if we're going to meet these kind of targets. But I think that's...
Well, I just wanted to talk about this housing situation, because whilst I agree we should loosen some regulations because it is ridiculous to get housing done in this country, we also need to look at the services that surround that housing area. Now, lots of the time, if you look across London, there are these massive blocks of flats going up, and there's no new GP surgeries, no new schools, no new hospitals. And my problem with that is that you basically are putting everybody into this big melting pot and not enough to go with it. So I'm all for building more homes, but I'm also all for building more hospital, schools and doctor surgeries along with it, which we don't do, and Labour's not planning on doing.
I think Will might be able to tell me this, but I think in Australia there is a direct link between when someone tries to put a development out, they say, well, you'll get a pot of money and how would you like it to use it? There's an encouragement for people to take new developments. And I think that's a great idea. The idea that you say, OK, well, look, you'll get an extra 50 grand in taxes from this development will come in. What do you want to do with it? That might encourage people to have houses built. But you can't have this situation where you've got people that just in perpetuity block any housing being near them. If you ask them, do you want houses, they'll go yes, but when you say, do you want houses near them, they'll go, no, not near us.
You know what's going to happen, don't you, Benjamin? All of these new Labour MPs who've never experienced this before, the moment that someone starts trying to put houses in their back garden, they're going to be bombarded by their constituents, and they are going to start stepping away from this because they want to be voted in by their constituents.
Do you know, I don't think that will happen, partly because a lot of Labour MPs are in their 30s and not on the housing ladder, so they're directly affected. So I suspect there's been a generational shift in how obvious this problem is. But you know what? We have to get past this situation. You see, and it's all parties without doubt, where you get sort of 5 locals will complain about a development and then everyone gets scared and backs off, and we can't have that situation.
Is the answer not new towns? Should we not just build more Milton Keynes, which has been a major success and comes with its own infrastructure and, as Alex says, its own doctors? Of course, we need the doctors and nurses to put in those places, but is that not the answer, rather than this bitty planning all over the place?
Well, if only. You know, you can't even get you know, a disused old petrol station transformed into a block of flats these days, let alone building a whole town. But, you know, it's a good enough goal. I think they're trying to do one near Cambridge.
Yeah, Jack has written in, and Jack says, oh, those new houses will end up going to all the migrants, legal and illegal, not the people who've been on the council's waiting list forever.
Yeah, we must prioritise British people. It's very simple. There are people in this country who need priority.
Ask Benjamin, would you do that?
Would I
prioritise British people in these new houses that have been...
Well, actually, let me turn that on its head, because the question you're asking is basically sort of refugees or economic migrants coming in. But the real problem, especially in a big city like London, is that you have Chinese, Saudi money buying apartments off-plan before they're even built. It's basically an incubator for their money. It's like sticking it in the bank. And so you get these enormous glass towers, and no one is living in them, or at least the people that own them aren't living in them. They're just buying them to keep their money going up and maybe to rent, and that has to be stopped.
I agree. I completely agree with that.
If you don't live in London or Bristol or Edinburgh
but it still doesn't
you shouldn't be able to
I absolutely agree with Benjamin.
Where's Lord Ali going to live?
Well, I don't know. You have to sell one of his 14,000-storey...
He's got houses in New York.
He's got multiple flats across London. There's Keir Starmer spent plenty of time there.
I have been in the Covent Garden flat.
I'm sure you have.
I won't ask what
I think you should sell it. We should divide it up and give it to small people.
It's very beautiful.
Christine's written in. She says, always a great show. I think the UK should be run by the current panellists, minus Barmy Benjamin. And someone else, Russell, says, I think Butterworth would be a great and much-needed addition to Syria's rebuilding efforts.
Syria. I was meant to be in Syria 2 weeks ago.
He was...
and they blocked my visa at the last minute. I said that'll be the last thing Bashar al-Assad does.
He was trying to bring an AK-47 through border.
Right.
For legal reasons, that's not true.
Still to come tonight, barber jackets and the origins of the COVID-19. But next, Renee's going to give her medical take on the morality and science around the first cousin marriage scandal. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Last orders at the bar, and I'm joined by Geordie Shore star Ricky Guanaccio. Have I said that right? Is that Italian?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Is Italian, your parents Italian? Is it?
Pronunciation was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, look, mate, Geordie Shore, I've never watched it, mate, so I do apologise about that. But I know these reality TV shows are making big stars out of the people, making you famous, making you loads of money. Is it worth it?
For me personally, yeah. It's been a hell of a career. Been a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Ups and downs, but first and foremost, money-wise, yeah.
That's good. So people stopping in the street, you being famous, wanting the autograph and all. How do you cope with that, Ricky?
Well, when we first started doing the show, I mean, we got our show off the back of Jersey Shore in America. We never expected the fame that we got, and, you know, being one of the biggest reality TV shows in the UK and now the world, you know, it's in 150-odd countries worldwide.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy. It's when you're living in houses. I mean, for example, Geordie Shore and Love Island's probably the same as well. When you're living in villas and you're living in houses, the arguing side sort of plays on your mind. You've got to deal with all that. You know, it's a hard place to be. It's a pressure cooker.
You're living in one of these villas, Ricky, or one of these houses. Do you ever wake up one morning and think, what am I doing here?
When I first started, yes. Yeah. Now, I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't mind all the, you know, there's no emotion connecting me now with film, and it's kind of like I go in there, it's fun, or it's, you know, it's dramatic, whatever it may be.
Have you ever worked behind a bar?
No.
No?
Yeah, for not a long period of time. My mum and dad had a...
Well, I can say...
definitely messed this one up.
Yeah, I can actually believe that you've never worked behind a bar.
Yeah, so my parents sacked us when I worked in the restaurant.
Well, obviously, I mean, you wouldn't get a job here with a pint like that, would you?
Do you want it?
No, mate, no.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Now, I've just been told by my lovely producer that I've been talking too much, and now we need to go straight to Dr. Renee. Take it away.
OK, I shall take it away. So this week, Richard Holden MP discussed in the House that we should ban marrying your first cousin. And yes, I know it's shocking you can still do that in the UK. And it's about time, I say. I'm sorry that it might upset certain cultural sensibilities, but it happens. But it mainly happens in communities that are Muslim, Orthodox Jewish and some traveller communities. And it doesn't matter, it has to stop. These are the facts. Cousin marriages are far more likely than any other marriage to produce a child that is severely disabled or fatally disabled and will die shortly after birth. British Pakistanis in this country account for 3% of all births, but they also account for nearly a third of all disabled children. That should tell you everything you need to know about first cousin marriages. The Enhanced Genetic Services Project, which was sponsored by the NHS, showed in Birmingham in 2009 to 10 that the combined infant, stillbirth and death rate in British Pakistani cousin marriages was 38 times that of white European children in the city. I've experienced the devastating results of cousin marriages. I worked in a hospital in London that had a large Pakistani and Bangladeshi community. There were children on the ward who never went home. They were ventilated, they were fed through a tube, they couldn't speak, they were severely disabled, they would be there for weeks, months and years because they just were too sick to go home. Imagine the pressure on the families. Imagine the pressure on that poor child born into that body that didn't have to happen because its parents were too closely related. And the reason it happens is all of us carry defective genes. But you need two of those genes, one from each side, for it to result in a disabled child. If you marry someone that close to you, it's much more likely that that person will have the same defective gene as you. The result is a severely disabled child. Surely it's a no-brainer. Let's stop it today, I say. But no, independent MP Iqbal Mohammed stood up and argued with Richard Holden in the House this week that he didn't want it to be outlawed.
It is extremely common in the Middle East and in South Asia. The reason the practice is so common is that ordinary people see family intermarriage overall as something that is very positive, something that helps build family bonds and helps put families on a more secure financial foothold.
What a disgrace. A British MP standing up for a medieval practice to be continued here. This is why we don't have assimilation. This is why multiculturalism is not working, because people are not adopting the values of our country. Wouldn't you agree, Benjamin?
I mean, you know, it is a terrible attack on our royal family to criticise first cousin marriages. They've got quite a history of it.
But they don't do it anymore because we know now what happened.
I mean, I'm staggered by it, and I think what's so shocking is the scale of it, because until relatively recently I was oblivious to the idea this was
over half
legal.
of British Pakistanis.
Yeah, and I think there is another part to this, which is these people probably aren't romantically willfully falling in love with their cousin. They're forced marriages. And so there is a bigger issue. If you want to stop this, then you have to stop the forced marriages taking place, because, you know, they're doing this to maintain the money, to keep it in the family, literally, and it is dangerous. And those women, in particular, don't have a choice in these scenarios. It is threatening.
The thing is, forcing marriage is actually a harder thing to solve than banning first cousin marriages, because, as the data shows, it's really hard to identify, and it's kept so quiet that a marriage has been forced. I completely agree. It should be tackled. But actually, if you can start by saying, well, we should ban first cousin marriages, you start getting to that place where the forced marriage is banned entirely as well. It sort of kills two birds with one stone, if you see what I mean. And we should ban it. It's a practice that has arisen in this country due to mass immigration. It's a failure of assimilation, because cultures where there is assimilation, in those parts of London where there's very good assimilation, actually, they don't practice this because they've integrated with British values. But there are parts of the UK that have got so many of the same ethnic background, the same culture, where it is completely acceptable and they never learn that it's bad.
Yeah, there was a mask-off moment when that MP was speaking where he said that this is a practice that has been taking place in the Middle East and Southeast Asia and is seen as largely positive. And that is the mentality of the left in this country. We need to embrace their culture. We need to embrace their values. They don't need to embrace ours. It speaks to this self-flagellating instinct amongst British society that says, for some reason, our culture is inadequate and shouldn't be defended in the face of, frankly, barbaric and inferior cultures being brought into this country.
The terrifying thing about that, Will, is the fact that they're setting up a political party in the new year, so that independent group of the, you know, far too comfortable with Hamas than I'd like, part of the political side faction within the House of Commons, Jeremy Corbyn being one of them, and who, of course, said Hamas were his friends. And, well, he's lost quite a few of them now, Hamas and Hezbollah. And the fact of the matter is, this sectarianism in our politics is going to grow and grow and grow.
Well, the other thing, and I think this is what it speaks to, is we've got a British MP who is putting his vote and keeping his seat ahead of disabling children.
Well, there's a really
selfish. It's selfish.
Well, I mean, you're a doctor, obviously. You know, the NHS is you know, was it Bradford's NHS? Maybe we just have to check out where it was. But they put out a document that said this practice is akin to white women having children over the age of 35. I mean, that's absolutely bonkers thing to. This, in my opinion, is more of that political correctness going to say, well, it's normal in our community the way it's normal in yours. Well, actually, that isn't normal.
So I was involved about 12 years ago with a group of MPs who were trying to look at this in Newham, and in the end they decided it was too sensitive.
And can I just say, in the interest of fairness to that MP, he did say he was against the marriages, he just was against banning it by law. I don't agree with him, but he didn't support it.
It's funny how these guys become libertarian when it suits them, isn't it?
All right, Willie, we're going to have you stand forthright up and ready to go, erect and off.
Are we off now? No ad break.
No, you're off.
Oh, wonderful. OK. Ladies and gentlemen, Lily Phillips is an OnlyFans model. We used to call them porn stars. She's garnered an immense amount of publicity on social media and in parts of the mainstream media now for a stunt in which she bedded 101 men in one day, although the euphemism bedded is doing a heck of a lot of heavy lifting in that scenario. She subsequently released a documentary on YouTube describing the experience. It's received 3.3 million views and counting in a week. We actually have a clip, I believe, from that documentary ready to show.
When was the last time you ate?
I think I had a yum yum, and I think I had a sandwich, and that was kind of, and then the rest. It's not for the weak, girls, if I'm honest. It was hard. I don't know if I'd recommend it.
I've found the response to this extraordinary. You've had some feminists like Julie Bindel in The Spectator saying, well, we need to blame the men who are involved in this video. In response, you've had many men like Lawrence Fox, like Leo Kearse, coming up after this saying, well, feminists can't have it both ways. If you want women to have full agency, they also need to take responsibility in situations like this. And you've had people like Ben Shapiro say, well, everyone's to blame. This really is a signal of the moral degradation of society. They're all being conned, and anyone who buys into this is being conned. This is not a morality story. This is fundamentally a commercial story. This is a story of how entrepreneurial people, if that's the way you'd want to phrase it, can hijack the culture wars and use social media to make huge amounts of money by pressing people's buttons. What she's done is she's created a platform for people to virtue signal. They've taken the bait, and as a result of that, she will never have to work another day for the rest of her life if she so chooses. If you are getting morally outraged by this, you are the one who is fueling this. This is a con.
Right, we've only got 2 minutes, so let's get some good views in.
OK, I don't disagree with you that she's conning everybody, she's making a lot of money, but that doesn't mean that two things can't be true at the same time. And I agree with Ben Shapiro. This is actually a demonstration of where we have got to in a society where young women are prepared to degrade themselves, and she's degrading herself, and men are prepared to queue up like dogs in an alley to help her.
But you're a libertarian. You're the sort of person that says live and let live.
That's right.
Do you find this sort of thing morally acceptable?
I don't think it's moral. I don't think it's morally right. But a libertarian isn't talking about morals. It's talking about whether they should be allowed to do it or not. I think she should be allowed to do it.
I mean, I'm just glad none of them were her cousin. I mean, that's it.
Well, we don't know that. I don't think the tests were that rigorous.
Shirley says, I don't know how Lily has time to sleep.
Well, I don't think she
Well,
did.
I don't think she did.
I don't think she did.
No.
I mean, look, I think this is really difficult because she's allowed to do what she wants. If anything, I really hope young women will see the after video. If you carry on watching that clip,
it's really sad.
I felt deeply sorry for her immediately. I thought, what a devastating thing to do.
You view that as naive, but I think it's just because my view and faith in humanity, I'm not as cynical as you are. I think you have a very deeply cynical take on what has just happened to that girl. I don't see it being...
I think there's a soft sexism in what you're saying. I think you're saying she can't make an informed decision.
No, because I would say that if I watched some gay lad with 100 men travelling...
Well, in that case, I think there's some sort of bigotry. She can make an informed decision.
You know, prostitution, people will say, is a choice, but that doesn't mean that women enjoy it or are happy.
And let's be honest, the only reason she made that quote-unquote choice is because of the financial gain. It's because of presumably men are paying for that to happen. And so it is a societal issue that we have created that availability. And while she can do what she wants with her body and make money however she wants, you wonder about what it tells, you know, the 17-year-old girl about to go into the workplace.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, loads more to come tonight. Will is going to give us an essay on morality. No, I'm joking. Including politicians wearing barber jackets, Keir Starmer battling Ed Davey for Christmas #1, and are we about to find out the shocking truth about the origin of COVID-19? I'll see you after this.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's a return to the rather grey skies for most of us. The wettest of the weather will be up across parts of Scotland. And for all of us, thanks to the winds coming in from the Atlantic, it will be feeling a good deal milder than it has been of late. As we return to Saturday evening, we will hang on to some clear skies initially across the far southeast, but cloud and rain across the west will spread across all parts during the course of the night. So we end the night really rather cloudy, some hill fog around, with the wettest of the weather really across the west. But note the temperatures, most of us seeing temperatures no lower than around 8 or 9 degrees. So it'll be a mild start to Sunday, but a rather cloudy one. We may well just see a few glimmers of sunshine across the far southeast and across East Anglia too, where further west across England we could see some spots of rain across the moors, the Welsh mountains too. Similar story for Northern England, some rain across the Pennines, maybe also the mountains of Northern Ireland. But the wettest of the weather really will be across parts of Western Scotland, where across the east of Scotland we may again just see a few glimmers of sunshine. And really, as we go through the course of the day, very little changes. The wettest of the weather always across more western and northern areas of the country, with that rain turning increasingly heavy and persistent later on across northwestern Scotland, and combined with a strengthening wind here. Still always a chance of a few glimmers of sunshine the further east you are, and for all of us a milder feeling day, as I mentioned, highs potentially for some of us reaching 13 degrees. Looking ahead to Monday, a little bit more breeze across the whole country, so that hopefully will break up some of the cloud across England and Wales, and hopefully more of us seeing some sunshine on Monday, but still still the risk of some further heavy rain across Scotland. That rain really not going very far anytime soon. That continues on to Tuesday with potentially unsettled weather more widely for all of us on Wednesday.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Dora Carrington is not known to lots of people, and very few pieces are in public collections. So you have had a great deal of work to do to put this exhibition together.
Absolutely. It's been, next year, it will be 30 years since the last major exhibition of Carrington's work, which happened in 1995 at the Barbican Gallery. And I guess if people know Carrington's work, they might have seen the film that took place that year, that came out that year, starring Emma Thompson as Carrington and Jonathan Pryce as Lytton Strachey, who was her main kind of key relationship in her life. And that, in a way, dramatised a lot of those relationships. And so people will often know her life as much as her art. There's only 16 works in public collections. And so apart from chances such as the big billboard campaign you mentioned 10 years ago, there have been very few chances to actually see her work in the flesh. And so what this exhibition does is bring together around 80 works by Carrington and a few of her key contemporaries, providing a new generation really a chance to see and enjoy her work. She was one of the most remarkable of her generation at the Slade School of Art. She won several prizes for her drawing and her draftsmanship. And in the first room of the exhibition, we have some of the work, for example, a couple of female nudes that she painted when she was at the Slade, and they really are kind of quite outstanding.
One of the things that's been said is that in her landscapes, she's sometimes painting the human body as well as the landscape. Is that something that occurred to you? Can you stand up that?
Yes, I mean, one of her most famous paintings we have of Spain has. It's very much like you could liken it to the female form. You know, the kind of the
delicately put.
Yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, and I'm still alongside Dr. Renee, Alex Armstrong, Benjamin Butterworth, and Willie Kingston. Plenty more to come tonight, including Barber Jackets, Starmer's shot at Christmas #1, Dr. Renee and Benjamin battle it out on immigration, and is the shocking truth about the origin of COVID about to be exposed with Trump in the White House? Plus, we answer all of your questions in Ask the Five. No topics are off limits, but I do have to be careful with Willie-related ones. Visit gbnews.com/your say and send your questions in there. It's 7 p.m, and this is the Saturday 5. So I'm out of my box. Still to come tonight, is it time to get on the Ozempic train? Donald Trump changes the clocks. I wish we would, I really do. And is Kemi Badenoch playing dress-up to impress farmers?
She is.
Then we'll be answering your questions, as I say. Get them through gbnews.com/your say. First of all, it is Saturday Night News with Sophia Hill.
Very good evening. It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Sphere Hill with your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Some breaking news in the last hour. At least 4 people are understood to have died after a gunman opened fire tonight at a migrant camp on Le Pun plage in northern France. Local police have confirmed multiple murders were committed, including 2 security agents and 2 migrants. A 22-year-old man has turned himself in, saying he had been the attacker and had also killed a 5th person in a nearby town earlier that day. The unnamed gunman's car has been searched, where 3 more weapons were found. We'll bring you more on this as we can. Now, more than 35,000 migrants have crossed the Channel illegally in small boats so far this year. The milestone figure was reached this morning after at least 250 migrants made the illegal journey in 5 small boats. After more than a week of no small boat crossings because of bad weather in the Channel, more than 1,150 migrants reached the UK's waters in just the past 3 days. It takes the provisional number assessed by GB News to 35,130 since the beginning of the year. Chinese money linked to Prince Andrew is now under investigation by MI5 as more details emerge about the embattled Duke's connection to an alleged spy. It's believed Prince Andrew invited the man in question, described as a close confidant, to Buckingham Palace, with their relationship reportedly dating back to 2012. The royal has now said he ceased all contact with the businessman in question and denied discussing anything of a sensitive nature. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace have claimed that they have no power to scrutinise the Duke's finances. Now, the billionaire, founder of high street fashion chain Mango, Isaac Andic, has died. The 71-year-old fell down a ravine to his death whilst hiking in a mountain range outside Barcelona in an accident, according to Spanish media. Andic was with his son and other family members when he fell, triggering a large emergency response. The Turkish-born businessman founded Mango in Barcelona in 1984, with Forbes estimating Andic's net worth to be $4.5 billion. And leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, has performed his Christmas single in Bath this afternoon. Davey was joined by the Bath Philharmonia Carers Choir at their Christmas concert at the Bath Forum. The single was written by 6 young carers and has climbed the charts since its release, with all proceeds going to the Carers Trust and Bath Philharmonia. Ed Davey has even pledged he'll do a skydive if the single hits 10,000 downloads next week. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sphere Hill. More from me in an hour. Now it's time for the Saturday 5.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for another very lively hour, although not quite as lively as little Lily's bedroom. We're going to crack on. Actually, I want to read out some comments first of all. Robert says, wow, I've just agreed with Benjamin. Tell him I'm going to come to Brighton. Oh, no, tell him to come to Brighton and I'll buy him a drink. Ooh. So, and that's from Rob. Have you got another 99, Rob? And Helen says, Lily has wrecked her life. Who will want to marry her or have children with her in the future? Sir Flip Flop says, that young lady is taking open borders to the extreme.
Oh, my God.
And Colin says, I watch a lot of content on GB News. There are many shows I like, but the Saturday 5 is my favourite. I find myself watching it over the football, unless the Toon are playing, of course. Colin, that speaks to me on so many levels.
Is that my
It really
Colin?
does. I don't know if it is your Colin, tell him I'll pop a fiver in the post. And Darren says, what a state society is. A girl openly has the doo-doo with the hundreds of guys, and this would never have happened years ago. We live in a seriously very sad times. End of days. The world is in free fall. And Jason says, hi, Darren, great show. I'm here in Stevenage, in Hertfordshire, a new town. There are currently many house building sites, dozens of high-rise blocks going up, very few facilities, more bike lanes than roads. You know, these things are going up there, but, you know, they don't actually serve the communities that they're going up to.
That was my point, yeah.
I can't talk about it. I was going to say being erected. Everything sounds like an innuendo. And I'm not meaning to be. Right. Is the shocking truth about the origin of COVID-19 finally about to come to light? President-elect Donald Trump, his incoming cabinet, seem determined to uncover the truth about China, convinced that a lab leak was the source of the 2019 outbreak. Now, the US House of Representatives has complained that government officials obstructed its investigations, even redacting documents and misleading journalists to prevent crucial information from emerging. Well, to explain this, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome the science writer and journalist, Matt Ridley. Matt, thank you very much. Oh, you look very festive, Matt. Good for you. Matt, could you just explain what it is about President Trump's election that make you of the view that we could finally find out the cold, hard facts?
Yeah, well, it's obviously 5 years ago around now that people started falling ill in Wuhan in China. We've never been given a full examination of what was going on in the laboratories in Wuhan, but we do know enough to know that they were doing extraordinarily relevant experiments on very relevant viruses right up until the moment when the pandemic broke out. So we'd love to know the Chinese side of the story. But absent that, there's a good chance that there is enough information in the United States to pin down what probably happened. And the FBI has been saying, even under the Biden administration, that it is convinced this started with a lab leak. The CIA is about to have a head, John Ratcliffe, who, as long as he gets confirmed by Congress, he chaired a bipartisan commission that came to the conclusion that it definitely came from a laboratory accident. And the head of the National Institutes of Health, which funded a lot of the research in Wuhan, is about to be, Francis Collins, who we now know from documents that have emerged, did his absolute best to prevent the truth emerging, whereas it's about to be headed by Jay Bhattacharya, who is on record as saying he thinks it's 80% likely that it did come from a lab. So the point is that information lurking within the American system through the funding of of Wuhan research, bat virus research in Wuhan, should be able to give us a more complete picture if there's an administration that wants the information to come out rather than an administration that doesn't want the information to come out.
Yeah, Matt, the COVID inquiry in this country is going to cost 208 million quid. That's from the Telegraph. That's enough to pay 5,000 doctors their salaries. I mean, do you think actually this will ultimately have been worth the vast expense to the taxpayer? Will they make the right inquiries?
Well, I think it's concentrating mostly on the wrong questions. When Michael Gove was rash enough to raise the issue of the origin of COVID as a relevant factor, and it is very relevant to how we manage the pandemic, because if it's been in human cells for 6 months before it gets into the human population, then that explains why it was so infectious from the start. But when he raised that, he was shot down by the judge leading the inquiry, saying, no, that's off topic. But there's other things. Why were we told that it was not airborne for months when it was? Why didn't we have a good look at what Sweden was doing with lockdowns, which was likely to be just as effective? Why did we overclaim for the vaccines? The vaccines were very important, in my view, in saving lives, but they didn't prevent transmission, and the claims made for them have probably backfired by increasing vaccine hesitancy. So those are the questions, rather than, what did Matt Hancock say to someone else on WhatsApp message on the 3rd of March? I just feel that the inquiry is being very British and obsessing with Westminster gossip rather than what actually matters to them.
It feels more like Tatler magazine, going through a sort of who's who and a what's what. Matt, before I get Renee to ask a question while she chokes to death, it's not COVID-19, I promise.
Might be.
Well, it could be, yeah. But Matt, you gave up being a parliamentarian. Now, I'm wondering, did COVID play a part in that? I don't mean contracting the virus, but I mean your exasperation with the way in which politicians and politics handled that in the first place, and what it actually did to the country in becoming effectively a police state in which we couldn't leave our homes.
Well, the main reason I left the House of Lords at the end of 2021 was because I wanted to spend more time in the northeast of England. You would understand that,
I would
Darren.
understand, yeah.
And the Toon got a good result today, by the way. Yes, in the background, I found, even serving on the Science and Technology Select Committee in the Lords, which was very well chaired by Lord Patel, it wasn't easy to really get at the issues that mattered. There's far too much of the sort of civil service obsession with process rather than product that was getting in the way of good inquiries. And I generally found that parliamentarians have not that much more ability than ordinary citizens to dig into the truth, but they have to spend an awful lot more time trying to do it. So yes, there was an element of frustration there, but it wasn't the main reason, I promise.
Yeah.
Hi, Matt. I'm Renee. I'm a GP. As many of us who did speak out from the beginning and suspected that this was a lab leak from Wuhan and that there were many things wrong with the vaccines, but we weren't allowed to speak. We were absolutely shut down. We were monitored by the government. But then we even saw this happening at a really high level. So we saw that the first inquiry from the WHO into whether this could be a lab leak was completely fabricated and shut down, that it absolutely was not a lab leak. And one wonders why. Is it because if we can categorically prove that this came from the lab in Wuhan, would China then be responsible for compensating the world?
Well, it's a good question because if you think about, what happened in Bhopal or in airline crashes, these are hundreds or thousands of people dying. We're talking about 20 million people dying. Now, if that was an industrial accident that killed 20 million people, it is by far the worst industrial accident that has ever happened. And we have never said when an airliner crashed, better we don't find out. We've always said we must find out to learn the lessons. So to me, it is extraordinary to have people, and I've had senior scientists say this to me, it's better we don't find out because it would only encourage Donald Trump and it would annoy the Chinese. Well, this is not an acceptable way of going about these things. And Brad Wenstrup, who's the congressman whose recent report just came out on this, lays bare from freedom of information and congressional subpoenas just how much scheming there was behind the scenes to deny us the information we needed. Now, I think that was a big mistake on the part of scientists. I think scientists should have said, look, this might be an accident that we've caused. Let's learn a lesson from it. And then they'd have been able to escape too much blame. As it is, they're going to taint the reputation of the whole of science. And like you, I think science is a wonderful thing and it should not be tainted.
Yeah.
Now, this is a question that goes to those ideologically captured scientists you just mentioned. This is one of now many so-called conspiracy theories that may just happen to be true. Do you think that this will lead to a reckoning amongst the medical and scientific establishment back to some of those older notions of the scientific pursuit for truth? Will this lead to a change in the culture there?
They can't even tell what a woman is, Matt.
Well, it is for me a bit of a personal crisis. I've been a champion of science all my life, and to find that groupthink, propaganda and motivated reasoning are so prevalent in the scientific establishment has been, well, I've known it's there, but it's worse than I thought. Yes, there needs to be a reckoning. There is very little sign of it happening yet. The scientific establishment is mostly closing ranks. I get contacted all the time by scientists in private saying, yes, of course, you're on the right lines, keep going. And when I say, please put your head above the parapet, most of them say, no, that would risk my career. So there's a real problem here. But Jay Bhattacharya, who was the main author of the Great Barrington Declaration saying that lockdowns were a mistake, is going to be head of the National Institutes of Health as long as he's confirmed. He's an incredibly brave, courageous and mild-mannered guy who has exactly this in his sights, a reform of science to make it more open-minded, more open to accountability to the people who fund it, and taking lots of things seriously. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be so open-minded that you let your brain fall out. You don't have to adopt every crazy idea, but you do have to be a little less like a Catholic church. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude about the Catholic Church, but you know what I mean. A little less like a cult, I should say.
Is there something to be said as well about the figures of people that have died as a result of COVID? I know there's been multiple discussions. When you look at some of the figures, some of them include people who may have died of a car accident but had COVID 30 days earlier. They were included as part of the death toll in some cases. Do we know an accurate number? And if not, why?
No, we definitely don't know how many died. You're absolutely right that there was an over-claiming of deaths from COVID at some stages. But equally, there's a whole bunch of people who wouldn't have died if we hadn't had lockdowns.
Yeah.
People who had cancer diagnoses delayed, people who had depression and anxiety, people who committed suicide, etc. So it's very difficult to come to a precise estimate. The official death toll from COVID itself is something like 6 or 7 million worldwide, but most estimates put it at somewhere between 20 and 30 million altogether, and that's not including the lockdown deaths that I'm talking about. So I think that, it's been an enormous cause of death. Now, admittedly, many of the people who died were elderly. It's not as if it was relatively harmless for children, and that is a blessing because that's not true, for example, of influenza. But it is a reminder of just how what an extraordinary episode we've lived through, and we mustn't memory hole it. We need to learn.
No, definitely.
Out there are bad actors wanting to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Matt, they're even saying, and I know this is something that puts a bee in your bonnet, but they're even saying we need a climate lockdown, some of them. I mean, I've never heard anything so terrifying in all my life. But, I would have said 5 years ago that it would never have happened. These days, I can't be so sure. It's terrifying.
Well, politicians found that being really authoritarian was really quite popular for a while, at least.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous thing for them to have discovered.
Yes. And we mustn't forget that some people made an awful lot of money from this, whilst others went broke.
Yeah. All right, Matt, we'll have to leave it there. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but everyone's favourite rational optimist. Thank you very much, Matt, for giving your time in your evening. Now, still to come tonight, Barber Jackets, they're from the Northeast as well. Starmer shot at Christmas #1, but next, Dr. Renee and Benjamin get it on over immigration. They'll battle it out. You're with the... Not like Lily. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
British 10-year-old has beaten Stephen Hawking and Albert Einstein in an IQ test, would you believe? Genius Krish Arora got the maximum score of 162, which puts him in the top 1% globally.
Goodness me. Well, Krish's parents noticed his brilliant potential after learning he could read fluently by the age of 4.
Krish, how does it feel to be a child genius?
I feel really happy and privileged.
Aww. Do you see it as a gift that you have?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just wonderful. Nichelle, what do you make of your child being a genius? When did it become apparent to you that Krish had something different, something special?
I think at the age of 4, he was doing things that were way beyond and above his age.
Yeah.
He could read fluently and he could spell correctly, and he was doing complex decimal divisions. So we thought that he's on to something. I think there's a spark out here.
Wow. And how are you reading books, Krish? Did you just pick them up from your mum and dad's bookshelf and just start reading to yourself?
We used to go to the library and we got books.
Such a good tip. Such a good tip as parents.
Yeah.
Head to the library, take your kids to the library.
So, Nichelle, can Krish just do it all? Is he just an all-rounder genius? Every subject, every talent, he can do it all?
Absolutely, and he helps out the family as well. He's been teaching me grade 1 piano, and he hopes, and I repeat, he hopes that I'm going to complete it in 12 months' time. And he also helps out Mum, because when Mum is teaching his sister, Mum sometimes says, Krish, go solve that problem and, help your sister out. So, yes, he can do it all.
Krish, you're a superstar.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5, my friends. It's now time for this. Yes, indeedy, ding, ding, ding. It's time for tonight's main event. Now, a staggering 609 migrants crossed the English Channel in a single day last Thursday. That marks the highest daily total since records began. As successive governments have failed to tackle this head-on, we're asking, is it time to just close Britain's borders altogether, legal and illegal? Seconds out, it's round one. Let's box them up. In the blue corner, we've got Dr. Renee. In the red corner, we've got Benjamin Butterworth. Which one of you's going first?
Me.
Take it away, Dr. Renee.
It's so lovely to be arguing with Benjamin again. So, Benjamin, in 2 days this week, when the weather has been absolutely shocking, we've seen 1,150 migrants come across the Channel. It is ridiculous. We have nowhere to put these people. We have no houses for them. We have no schools for their children. We have nothing. It's a problem in so many ways. It is costing us a fortune, and what it's doing is it's encouraging the government to not train anybody to do the jobs that they might eventually do, the low-paid jobs. It's not allowing us to raise wages so that people can actually earn a living where they want to go to work. We have so many young people who are economically inactive. There's no incentive for them to work. They are interrupting our culture and not assimilating. So we are disrupting British culture to the point where some people feel they can't actually see what British culture is anymore. And it is, as a result, dividing society. I say it's time to just stop all migration. Let's say for 5 years, nothing, not legal or illegal. Let's get to grips with the situation we have in this country and then rethink.
Well, I tell you what would guarantee us to all be poorer, and that would be to simply block any immigrants coming into the country. One of Britain's great assets is that it is culturally familiar to the whole world. Everyone knows our music and our art and our history. In fact, the most celebrated holiday in the world is Independence Day from Britain. So lots of countries are familiar with us, and they often want to send some of their most talented people, you know, even from Australia, like Will. They come to London because they know they can build a better career, they can build a business, they can make more money. There are lots of very high-value immigrants that come to this country. Indeed, several of the 10 richest people in Britain were not born here, and they've brought billions of pounds into our economy. So this idea that immigration is simply, I don't know, people coming from India on low-income jobs is wrong. I went to the London School of Economics, which is a very international university, and it attracts the absolute cleverest people in the world, and also me. And so I think it would be mad to close the borders because we would be poorer.
OK, so that's a really interesting point, because as you went to the London School of Economics, I find it quite staggering that you haven't looked at our GDP per capita, which is actually going down. So it doesn't matter if we're adding some scientists and some really intelligent people to the country. Most of the people that we're adding are just a drain on society. And we've just had a report out that shows that by the time they get to the age of 65, these immigrants are actually costing more than they are bringing in, £250,000, I believe. And if they then live on to 70 or is it 80, I can't remember, it goes up to 600,000. So, yes, you're right. There are some very intelligent people. Most of them are not coming here. What's coming here is people who want to actually make themselves a better life in the land of milk and honey. And they know that we will give them that without them actually giving very much back. So let's close the borders for 5 years. And at the end of that 5 years, when we've actually got the hotels emptied again, we've actually got our economy growing again, we can then say, we'll have you, because you're a scientist who's very bright and intelligent, but we're not having you.
Well, they won't want to come here because we won't have an economy left by that point.
Yeah, it's Labour would have destroyed it.
The fact is... No, that wasn't what I was saying. The fact is, if you look... I've just been travelling around the world quite a lot, and if you look at countries like Saudi Arabia, like Dubai, those countries in the Middle East, for example, that are doing extremely well, they're doing well because they're taking in...
You say of oil.
Well, they have oil, right, but they're moving away from oil. What they're building their economies on is getting these extremely capable people to come to their country to be well paid, and it's transforming those countries. The story of the last 100 years is one of talent and wealth moving around, and we're richer and better off because of it. And frankly, I wonder how many of us would be here without immigration. I mean, my grandparents are Canadian, for example. We'd be wiping a lot of us out. I mean,
we wouldn't, because we're closing the gates. We're not sending people back.
Justin Trudeau is more than welcome to have you back. That's all I can say. Listen, the point is, how many of the more recent arrivals are on welfare, for example, or access to social housing?
The employment rate among immigrants is higher than among British-born.
But the point is, though, that they're not making more than the threshold to be a fiscal net benefit to the Treasury. So they're taking out more than they put in. That has been proven. So the fact of the matter is, you saying it's good for the economy, well, actually, that's just not true.
Well, in that case, you need to go to the care homes and tell the people relying on those services, actually, no one's going to come and give you your medicine or provide your food or clean up after you have an accident. No one's going to do that because we've told all those care workers that come from India in many cases, none of them can come.
Who looked after old people in the 1990s before mass migration?
Well, the reality is that immigration has suppressed...
I'd actually want an answer to that question.
Well, this is the answer. It's suppressed wages, which meant that British people who have gone to university don't want to go into a low-paid job where their prospects...
a good thing.
Well, it is if there's more jobs, but there isn't those higher-paying jobs.
You've got to back that up. It's a good thing that...
Why is it good?
It's a good thing that our economy is a tertiary economy. It's based on services and skills.
Why?
You can't pretend, and that makes us richer.
Well,
we are richer beyond proportion of what our grandparents had when they were young.
You're right, but
I don't want people that can work for massive companies and set up big services and make billions of pounds. I don't want to turn around to them and say, oh no, actually you should work in Pret-a-Manger. We wouldn't be richer if that was the economy.
So you're being snobby. You're saying that working in Pret-a-Manger has no value.
No, I'm saying the fact that we have skilled labour that can set up businesses and provide services which is well paid is a much better economy than one where the only option to most British people would be to work in a cafe. We've moved beyond that, but we still need people to do those jobs.
We have 14%
and so they come in.
of our young people economically inactive. Would you not prefer they were working in care homes and in Pret-a-Manger than being economically inactive?
I started my career off working in Tesco's, and I went on to have a very successful career afterwards in technology for 10 years. Right? Well, you can debate that. Exactly. I worked in retail stores. I worked in the supermarket chains, and that didn't hurt me whatsoever. If anything, it taught me good
So why aren't you there now?
Because I've grown out of it, but that's fine. Because now a younger person can replace me. They can follow my career. The thing is, you're right in saying we want those people to go into those highly skilled jobs, but they will never start university or leaving university into a 110 grand a year job. They need to work through the economy, like for all of us. It's a ladder. It's not just I've done my degree. It should be a ladder. It should be a ladder, but they can't get those low-paid jobs anymore, and they don't want to do them because they don't even pay enough to get them out of their parents'
Yes, exactly.
house.
The problem is that we don't value the care sector enough in this country in order to pay them a decent wage, a wage that they can afford to live on, for doing really hard work.
To clarify, you want... I
want to pay care workers more,
yes. Put taxes up. So because that would cost billions and billions of pounds.
I would just prefer that we stop spending £5 billion on asylum for boat people and start spending it on British people, to be perfectly honest.
You should get Priti Patel on, because she's the one that put all that money in. I dare say you're a fan of...
Well, actually, poll after poll shows British people would rather be poorer but look after their culture in the long term than have more immigration to the country that's unsustainable.
Just let me articulate that point. I think we need to value them more. We need to ensure that they're able to speak English, because I think it is an affront to those elderly people in those homes, in the most vulnerable position of their lives, with a load of people that don't speak English in many cases.
Yeah.
I think it's deeply unfair. And that's the position of, because you have applied a zero-sum game to it, that says, well, the cheaper the better, basically. That's your idea of a successful, thriving economy.
No, and they definitely should speak English. You know, I remember canvassing in Tower Hamlets and we were shocked by how many women couldn't speak English.
Yes.
And that's something that...
Well, that's Labour's Britain. Labour's
Well,
Britain.
it was under the Tories. The Tories actually cut the funding for people to
Blair
learn
that
English.
turned on
They're
the
not going to learn
taps.
English, Benjamin.
Right, OK. Still ahead on the bunch of five. Kemi Badenoch irritates Alex with her fashion choices. Renee reviews Keir Starmer's new smash hit. And Jill Biden is de-woked by a child. You're with the Saturday Five. We're live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Metaverse. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's a return to the rather grey skies for most of us. The wettest of the weather will be up across parts of Scotland. And for all of us, thanks to the winds coming in from the Atlantic, it will be feeling a good deal milder than it has been of late. As we return to Saturday evening, we will hang on to some clear skies initially across the far southeast, but cloud and rain across the west will spread across all parts during the course of the night. So we end the night really rather cloudy, some hill fog around, with the wettest of the weather really across the west. But note the temperatures, most of us seeing temperatures no lower than around 8 or 9 degrees. So it'll be a mild start to Sunday, but a rather cloudy one. We may well just see a few glimmers of sunshine across the far southeast and across East Anglia too, where further west across England we could see some spots of rain across the moors, the Welsh mountains too. Similar story for northern England, some rain across the Pennines, maybe also the mountains of Northern Ireland. But the wettest of the weather really will be across parts of western Scotland, where across the east of Scotland we may again just see a few glimmers of sunshine. And really, as we go through the course of the day, very little changes. The wettest of the weather always across more western and northern areas of the country, with that rain turning increasingly heavy and persistent later on across northwestern Scotland, and combined with a strengthening wind here. Still always a chance of a few glimmers of sunshine the further east you are, and for all of us a milder feeling day, as I mentioned, highs potentially for some of us reaching 13 degrees. Looking ahead to Monday, a little bit more breeze across the whole country, so that hopefully will break up some of the cloud across England and Wales. So hopefully more of us seeing some sunshine on Monday, but still the risk of some further heavy rain across Scotland. That rain really not going very far anytime soon. That continues on to Tuesday with potentially unsettled weather more widely for all of us on Wednesday.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. Well, I think it's just safe to say Benjamin's come back with a bang, because a lot of you have, well, your blood pressure's gone through the roof. One woman whose comment I've just lost, Nigel, says it's not that care workers and supermarket workers are not valued, it's just that their employers have found an endless source of cheap labour through mass migration.
Yeah.
And Sharon, I found your comment, there it is. Sharon, my daughter was a care worker and Benjamin talks rubbish. The immigrants work for low wages, which takes jobs away from the British people. And ATG says it's a Ponzi scheme. By that logic, you need to continually have people coming over forevermore.
Yeah. And all Ponzi schemes fail.
To support however many people there are in the country at any time. They cave in on themselves. Right, okie dokie. And, just on a very fruitful comment, I won't be reading it. Someone's just called us very colourful language. Anyway, it's time for this. Yes. Oh, well, actually, I prefer you to go the other way. That's how we're used to it. But we normally start with a Willie, poor Benjamin.
Oh, am I starting? Is that where the camera's on me?
It's meant to go this way. Yeah, well, it's meant to go this way.
Well, Donald Trump, lots of people, I would say, he's turning the clocks back 50 years on women's rights, but he actually literally wants to turn the clocks back. So he has said, he put on his website, Truth Social, that he wants to get rid of daylight saving time.
Daylight savings time.
That's the one. So that it wouldn't change in spring and autumn. Now, Gordon Brown very nearly did this in the UK in 2009, but there was uproar from Scottish farmers, I think. And so should Donald Trump get rid of daylight saving time? And should we? What do you think?
I'm fed up with it.
Yeah,
I think it's just silly now, isn't it? Everyone's got more about all their clocks all the
What
time.
do you say, though? Because a lot of people get... And I've spoken about this before, and I've had a lot of angry people say to me that I'm being deeply selfish to the Scottish farmers because they're the ones that live in darkness.
But they don't live in darkness. They just need
I don't mean that.
OK, hang on. Maybe I was slightly controversial here. It's just an hour difference for them. They don't have to live in darkness. It's just the way they calculate
the clocks don't move the sun.
This was all done for market reasons, to align markets with
No,
different
but
times,
also they've done experiments on doing this, and more children get killed as they walk to school in the dark in Scotland.
Right.
So it is actually a safety thing. I actually quite like those late summer evenings when it's not raining to sit in my garden. So I'm being selfish.
No, fair enough. Why not? Well,
it's your topic. What do you...
I know this. I know. Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I know it annoys a lot of people. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because China has one time zone, for example, even though it's obviously an enormous country. So clearly there are other places in the world that aren't as worried about the things you said, as aren't reliant on it, and they function absolutely fine. I think the idea about how dark it is in the morning is an interesting point. But, you know, I can't say I have a problem with it at the moment. But, you know, I don't know whether you have the power as president to change the time. I don't know whether it needs approval.
Well, I actually think we've got Donald. I think we've got Donald here for his thoughts. Donald, do you have the?
I think we will do it, actually, Benjamin. I think it's a great idea. We should get rid of it.
Are you constipated?
Right, Alex, what have you got?
Yeah, this is a weird order. Yeah, I've been in a little hot water the last couple of days because I criticised Kemi Badenoch for wearing a Barber jacket to farmer protest. Well, in all fairness, I said that she'd never worn one before, and she obviously has, as many Tories dived in to tell me. But my point was really quite simple. I don't like it when politicians play dress-up for certain events. I mean, the protest was in London. Kemi Badenoch's team have obviously said, why don't you put on that Barber jacket, Kemi, because you'll look like one of the boys. Well, I think it's ridiculous. Politicians are politicians. They can wear their business attire and make the same point. And it's not just Kemi Badenoch, but it's other leaders.
Well, hang on, because that's a community note.
That is a community note.
No, well, I just said it. I was wrong. It was wrong, right?
What does the community note say?
Community note, it says Kemi Badenoch has worn a Barber jacket in 2018 and upwards.
But hang on,
Well.
You said that about Kemi Badenoch. Some people might say, and he's my friend, but I'm going to say it, some people might say, to play devil's advocate, that Nigel was wearing a Barber jacket at the farmers' protest.
Yes.
He doesn't...
the same rule applies to Nigel.
Yeah, but
same rule
the
applies to
idea that you wear a Barber jacket at certain moments... Well, I wear a Barber jacket at certain moments.
But would you not feel like a bit of a fraud going to... You wouldn't come to London in a Barber jacket normally.
I've got one on now.
But would you...
Not right now, but...
Well, you'll get community note for that. But would you not feel a bit of a fraud going to a farmer's protest, specifically bearing in mind, I'm going to put my Barber jacket on, I look like one of them? Do you not think that just seems weird?
Because Alex messaged...
Where are you? Are you going to a farmer's protest then?
He doesn't know where he's going, that's why he looks like that.
Yeah, well, no, Alex had messaged saying, why would you wear something about a Barber jacket? And I was like, I'm wearing one right now. Anyway... do you find it hypocritical just to Keir Starmer put on a Barber jacket?
It did look...
Depends whether it's been paid for or not.
Like, it did look like she just bought it. And also, Barber jackets are not cheap. There are other brands available, contrary to this conversation.
There are.
You know, they cost a couple of £100 in some cases. And I think the best ones are the ones where you can see they've been wearing it for 30 years and just keep sewing up the holes. That's the real...
The poor farmers have to do that.
So, right, you know, I'm going to go next. You know the whole controversy around... No one's saying Merry Christmas or Happy Christmas anymore. They all say happy holiday.
Well, they shouldn't.
So this
Feliz
is a
Navidad.
complete acquiescence to the woke mob. I think, actually, Benjamin Butterworth has been advising the First Lady, Jill Biden, from the Middle East. And where he's been, despite there being a climate emergency, by the way, he's been jetting off around the Middle East like a sort of trade envoy. And anyway, Jill Biden said, "Happy Christmas." And listen to what this little child shouted with his full heart. I loved it.
Hello. How are you? Hi. Happy holidays. Hi. Happy Christmas. Happy Christmas. Yes.
Well, he told her. Exactly. That's how we defeat the woke. We ridicule and shout.
On the mouths of babes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wasn't that good?
It is good. It's
Would
horrible.
your little girl have shouted?
Probably. Yeah.
Good.
Like mother, like daughter.
Absolutely.
Raising them right, raising them right.
I do think Happy Holidays is a horrible phrase.
It really is.
But
It's inclusive.
I don't think you really hear it in this country. It's quite an American way to approach it.
I've seen it.
You walk down retail stores, don't you? In retail stores like Regent Street, you've got Happy Holidays, Merry Winter, and all this rubbish. It does happen.
It's ugly and unnecessary. And I don't think, if it's about multiculturalism, I don't think other people have ever asked for this, right? So why do it?
Yeah.
I've never met a Muslim friend that has a problem with the concept of Christmas, right?
And we all wish them happy Eid and, you know, Hanukkah and everything. So why not just embrace all of it?
Friend of the show, Marcus Walker, was at a Christmas dinner at Parliament House in recent days, and apparently they had Christmas crackers where they'd taken out the cracking thing, the snapping thing, to make sure that the crackers were 100% fully recyclable. So the wokification of Christmas is very much a thing in the UK.
Well, I opened a cracker last night at my Christmas do for GP, and there was a message from the Trussell Trust.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, what have you got, Dr. Renee?
So, there is a group called Keir Starmer and the Granny Harmer.
Oh, yeah.
Who have gone to the iTunes #1 slot with a tune. We've got a slip. I can't speak tonight. A clip of it now.
You need to learn.
Be freezing this Christmas without fuel at home. It'll be freezing this Christmas while Keir Starmer's warm. It'll be cold, so cold without fuel at home this Christmas.
She told me that she doesn't get out of bed till midday because she didn't want to turn the heating on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Should be Christmas #1.
So, 3 million views so far, £10,000 donated to elderly charities. I couldn't support it more. Please go. Don't just watch it. Donate some money, buy it as a view. The wording is brilliant, you know, that they talk, Merry Christmas, Keir, I hope you can sleep at night. And I feel exactly the same. Whilst we spend money up the wall. You know, David Miliband doesn't even know what they've spent money on in his office. We're taking away 300
it's not
quid. Did I say David?
Yeah.
Oh, God. I really can't speak. And I
That's
haven't
his
even been
brother.
drinking. Perhaps I should be. You know...
You also nearly swore, I could tell.
Did I? Did I?
Up the wall.
OK, but I didn't. I wasn't like Alex.
No, last week, yeah.
And I think it's fantastic because we need to look after our elderly and we need to give them back their £300.
Benjamin, are you buying the single?
No, unfortunately. I'll just get a
Can't afford
Davies
it.
Lib Dem single instead. I mean, look, no, I don't think that you should get a winter bonus just because you're 66 years old. And they got £900 rise in the state pension this year. I think it'll be £450.
Which is still one of the lowest in Europe.
But it's £900 more than they had last winter. So this idea they're all freezing is just nonsense, right? They've got more money from the state than they've ever had before. And we know that a third of pensioners are millionaires. So I dare say the people that can afford to donate are the pensioners.
They're not millionaires. They're millionaires in their houses.
That's
what
the same logic that the farmers have put to them like manure up a field. I nearly said something else.
You can't speak either.
And guys, if you're going to live in this country,
I've been on
you should
air
learn
for
English.
3 hours before this show, and the fact of the matter is that you're saying they're millionaires, saying pensioners are millionaires, you are playing fast and loose with the truth. They are sat in homes or on property that is worth millions. That doesn't mean you're a millionaire.
But why should I pay their bills just because they want to live in a big house and maybe don't have enough income? That's a decision for the individual, right? Why shouldn't I pay their food bill or why shouldn't I pay their electricity bill as well?
Because they're suffering and you know...
Why should it be 66?
No, but,
why
you know,
not
they're suffering.
62?
And
It's nonsense.
you are
Since
also
when
the
did people like you
supporter-
want to get the
Hang on.
state just handing out everything
Because
to
you
people?
are also
You're a communist Yes, Darren.
Fine, let's change all of that by not paying for the highest electricity bills in the whole, well, actually in the developed world.
Yeah, but I tell you what, when someone who's 22, for example, and works in Tesco or a care worker, the people you spoke about earlier, they have a salary that means they probably can't afford to put the heating on midwinter.
But they can do an extra shift. No, but they can do an extra shift. They can earn extra money.
They're unlikely to get enough money in.
Well, this Labour economy, they certainly are.
Why should you get it just because you're 66?
Well, hey, I think you're wrong, but I could go on all day. Anyway, Will.
Another week, another study proving that Ozempic, one of the new weight loss drugs, is the medical breakthrough of the 21st century. In this time, we are now seeing that it could very well improve cognitive function and reduce the risk of cancer. This is wonderful news. I not only think this is the medical breakthrough of the 21st century, I think it will have a bigger impact on the real economy than AI in the medium term over the next 5 years. This is a wonderful advancement. I think we have some alleged doctors on the panel who don't believe in this medical miracle, but I can speak for all sensible people in saying this is a great thing for the world, Renee.
OK, so Will obviously isn't up to date on the news from Ozempic this week because the studies that you're talking about have all been funded by the company Novo Nordisk that actually makes it. All of the researchers are paid by that and they won't share the data. But there was a study out this week showing that Ozempic is actually potentially going to cause cancer and is causing cancer. It already has a warning, a black box warning by the FDA for thyroid cancer. It potentially causes pancreatic cancer. You're talking nonsense.
Yeah, but the risk of obesity, which is the biggest killer in Western countries, and a chance to actually reverse obesity, that's the real opportunity.
Do you know how you reverse
and for the first personal responsibility. Yes, I believe in personal responsibility, but that hasn't worked. It hasn't worked.
Yeah,
and this is something that does work.
Just stop eating. Get on the treadmill,
obesity has reversed in America for the first time in modern history, and it is because of this drug. It is saving lives.
They then go and in 10 years' time all have cancer that needs really expensive cancer treatment.
Will, would you rather have obesity or cancer?
I think it is certain that this solves obesity. I think it is far from certain that this actually causes cancer.
Will?
I have used it. It's fantastic.
No, it does.
I have used Mounjaro. It is wonderful. I also have to give financial advice there. I don't think you can do that. I strongly recommend this drug. I think it's fantastic. Actually, I probably can't give medical advice either. No. Don't listen to anything I've just said.
OK, right, still ahead. We answer all of your questions in Ask the Five. No topics off limits. I wonder what you've unleashed upon us this week. You're with the Saturday Five. We're live on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joining me now is food historian and author of Christmas with Dickens, Pen Vogler. Pen, let's start with Christmas Carol. Did A Christmas Carol change Britain's view of Christmas?
I think it did, enormously. Before then, people were beginning to think, as they do now, that Christmas might be being a little bit commercial. It was too much food and drink, not enough kind of seriousness or not enough kind of love and family. And what Dickens did with A Christmas Carol was show people who were coming to the cities, who were kind of losing their rural history, a new way of celebrating Christmas, that a real, just a family could get together and love and kind of get around the table together. And whereas before, a lot of those kind of Christmas dishes would have been seasonal, lots of people would have eaten them at different times of the year, Dickens does two things. He takes the goose, which is what the Cratchits are going to eat, and he turns it to a turkey, much bigger, meatier, kind of more generous. And then he takes this thing that he never calls Christmas pudding in A Christmas Carol. There's no Christmas pudding. He only calls it plum pudding, and he anchors it to that day. And interestingly, after then, people start publishing recipes for Christmas pudding, and it starts getting its name, Christmas pudding, from plum pudding. And I think all of that really comes from A Christmas Carol.
You say becomes a Christmas pudding almost immediately after A Christmas Carol is published.
Yes, I mean, it's occasionally called Christmas pudding before, but not often. And then a very famous for the time, the kind of Delia Smith of her day, lady called Eliza Acton, publishes a recipe called The Author's Christmas Pudding in 1845. And we know she's a big Dickens fan because she sent a copy of her cookbook to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for your messages about tonight's topics. Speaking of which, it's time for this. Oh dear, what have you unleashed upon us this week? Amanda has written in. Amanda says, what period would you travel to if you were given a time machine?
Oh, I like this.
That's from Amanda. Will?
It always depends on what position in society you're at, doesn't it? But let's assume I'm in an aristocratic position. I'd love to go back to the period of Pax Romana and just be, you know, a member of the Roman Senate and just eat grapes on the couch and, you know, politically manoeuvre and pull the strings.
This is what Will fantasises about at home, isn't it?
I'd like to go back to the 1940s, but obviously be very wealthy, not poor. And just party the whole time.
Maybe through the wall.
Maybe 46 to 49.
Where they were just partying.
I would like to go back to when my grandfather's ancestors were alive, and one of my grandmothers who fought on the first day of the Battle of the Somme. And I would love to meet people like that, actually.
But you would be at war?
No, I would leave in my time machine.
No, I'm gay, I wouldn't be.
Do you know, I leave in my time machine. I've met you now.
I don't know which year I'd go to, but I watched Dr. Brian Cox the other day, and I couldn't believe this, but he said time travel is possible into the future, not into the past. And you could travel for 2 years and go 4 million years in the future. That is scientifically possible if we could develop it. That blew my mind that it is something that could happen.
Alex?
Well, I would actually go to the future. I think it might be cheating here, but going to the future would be far more interesting, wouldn't it? See what happens.
Get the lottery numbers.
Yeah, get the lottery, come back. Way better.
OK, I didn't know the future was an option. Yeah,
well, it says time travel, it didn't say when. It didn't say forwards or backwards.
Well, I mean, God help you, the future of this country at the minute. But on that cheery note, Jeremiah says, where would you relocate if you were forced to leave the country? Well, Willie, I imagine you're going to say Oz.
No, I probably wouldn't. Look, I would, notwithstanding the recent events in Amsterdam, I would still say Amsterdam. I love it as a city, but the recent troubles they've had are very concerning.
Costa Rica.
All right, Costa Rica. America for me, yeah.
America or Australia, one of those two.
Syria.
There's a new government, Benjamin. I hear you might fit in rather well.
Hello, I'm Benjamin. They, them.
There was a very funny CNN image, which I think may have been a fake, where it had the pronouns next to the new Syrian terrorist leader.
Next up, my friends, it's brilliant Leo Curse for the Saturday Night Showdown. Cheers very much for watching, and to my panel. And we'll see you again, same time next week.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Metaverse. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's a return to the rather grey skies for most of us. The wettest of the weather will be up across parts of Scotland. And for all of us, thanks to the winds coming in from the Atlantic, it will be feeling a good deal milder than it has been of late. As we return to Saturday evening, we will hang on to some clear skies initially across the far southeast, but cloud and rain across the west will spread across all parts during the course of the night. So we end the night really rather cloudy, some hill fog around, with the wettest of the weather really across the west. But note the temperatures, most of us seeing temperatures no lower than around 8 or 9 degrees. So it'll be a mild start to Sunday, but a rather cloudy one. We may well just see a few glimmers of sunshine across the far southeast. eastern across East Anglia too. Where further west across England, we could see some spots of rain across the moors, the Welsh mountains too. Similar story for northern England, some rain across the Pennines, maybe also the mountains of Northern Ireland. But the wettest of the weather really will be across parts of western Scotland, where across the east of Scotland we may again just see a few glimmers of sunshine. And really, as we go through the course of the day, very little changes. The wettest of the weather always across more western and northern areas of the country, with that rain turning increasingly heavy and persistent later on across northwestern Scotland, and combined with a strengthening wind here. Still always a chance of a few glimmers of sunshine the further east you are, and for all of us a milder feeling day, as I mentioned, highs potentially for some of us reaching 13 degrees. Looking ahead to Monday, a little bit more breeze across the whole country, so that hopefully will break up some of the cloud across England and Wales, and hopefully more of us seeing some sunshine on Monday, but still the risk of some further heavy rain across Scotland, that rain really not going very far anytime soon. That continues on to Tuesday with potentially unsettled weather more widely for all of us on Wednesday.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion.